The first guest to arrive that Christmas evening, with perhaps a half hour of diminishing daylight remaining, was Bradley Winthorpe. The time was shortly after 5 p.m. After a long and harrowing drive up a narrow and winding road high up in the mountains, he stopped his 1969 Citroën DS21 short of the entrance to the property he was visiting. The mountain road ended here. One could go no further or turn around without entering the property grounds. The road was that narrow. He couldn't imagine a vehicle much larger than the Citroën making it up here safely. Two vehicles traveling in opposite directions along the same narrow lane would encounter an even thornier dilemma, though he supposed advanced planning on the part of the property owner much reduced the likelihood of that happening. It was impossible to access the private road without first passing through a locked gate using a one-time entrance code. His code had been included with his invitation to tonight's private, exclusive event. Now, as he sat in his idling vehicle with his foot held firmly on the brake pedal, he faced another gate. This one was standing wide open, presumably because no one who wasn't supposed to be here would have made it this far anyway. A tall iron fence with pointy tips atop each of its slats surrounded the large estate, which was ringed by a dense forest. Above the ornate gate was an arched piece of custom wrought iron art, spelling out the words Raven's Reach. The massive manor house was visible at the end of a long, curving drive, which looped back around in this direction from the front of the house. A huge statue fountain was situated in the center of the large patch of open ground between the looping halves of the drive. The statue was of an ominous-looking cloaked figure sitting atop a horse, rearing up on its back legs. The fountain was dry. Bradley had a hunch many years had passed since it had last been operational. He remained where he was a while longer, holiday music playing at low volume on the radio. Several full minutes passed while he lingered in hesitation and listened to Bing Crosby croon White Christmas. He saw no other cars parked at the top of the long drive. Nor did he see any parked anywhere else on the property. There were a few outlying buildings on the grounds, all of which looked larger than the average middle-class home. He supposed at least one might be a guest house, but the remaining buildings likely served other purposes. The one furthest away looked like a greenhouse. No lights were on in any of the outlying buildings, adding an additional layer of creepiness to an already high overall creep factor. Also not helping matters was the total absence of any visible human presence on the property. No one was out walking on the grounds. Nearly all the windows of the main house were also dark, lending the place an even eerier atmosphere as daytime continued giving way to dusk. A few lights, however, were visible on the ground floor, albeit only in the windows immediately adjacent to the front door. In that moment, the presence of those few lights was the only thing that kept him from zipping through the open gate, quickly turning around, and getting away from this place as fast as he could. Someone was in there. That's what those lights meant. They were in there and waiting for him. A lot about this situation didn't feel right. Just the sight of the imposing manor itself was enough to send shivers running up his spine. From his research, he knew Raven's Reach was incredibly old, having been constructed in the latter part of the 18th century, right after the end of the Revolutionary War. Thanks to Wikipedia, he knew a lot about the origins of the estate. Its construction was commissioned by a wealthy shipping magnate named John Henry Thornton III. Though not technically a founding father of the United States, he moved in the same social circles. His fortune was one of the largest in the country at the time and was built on the backs of countless less fortunate people. Raven's Reach remained the property of the Thornton family for nearly 3/4 of a century, until certain heirs failed to produce offspring and the bloodline died out. The question of who owned it now was a mystery. He tried every trick he could think of to unearth the property holder's name, to no avail.